Hi everyone, welcome back to Pandora's Box, and this is going to be episode 4 in my docu-series on addiction. So, if you haven't caught up with any of the episodes, or you're just joining us for the first time, there's links down in the description that lead back to all the other previous videos, and there should be a link up on one of these sides that brings you to the full playlist, so you can go to wherever you left off. So, after last video, um, it was pretty intense. And so you'd think that after something like that, my addiction would have just started right there, full blown. Um, but it actually didn't. I didn't start drinking or partying or anything like that. I mean, I did a little drinking. Mostly I just smoked pot. But for the most part, I didn't do anything crazy per se, or out of the norm. I was depressed a lot. I mean, who wouldn't be? But other than that, I mean, for the first almost year or so, there wasn't anything unusual. I mean, I dropped out of school, I went back, I still didn't manage to get my grade 12 that year, but I wasn't really too worried about it at that point. So the following year, my parents decided that I needed a change, and they bought me a one-way ticket to Calgary, Alberta, where my older sibling was living at the time. So I went in October of '99. I went up to Calgary, first by myself, and then my partner came up a month later. And for better or worse, it was a change that I probably did really need. So, I got up to Calgary and I got a job working security, and, nothing was really exciting happening again. Like if you were expecting maybe that, this event would just immediately send me into that downward spiral. Uh, it didn't for some reason, but no, I don't know. So, the first few years, first year in Yarmouth was fine, first year in Alberta was fine. Um, then me and my partner started to fight a lot, and she ended up moving back to Nova Scotia, and I ended up moving in with some friends, and that's when I think the real addiction began, I guess. When things started going south. Well, when it comes to things like addiction, there's always a start. And I remember in one of my previous videos, I think it was the first one, I mentioned that I'd never been a high functioning addict. And kind of a lie, I guess, because if you extend my addiction beyond what I used to consider it, that was just the time I spent using crack cocaine. But if you actually bring it back to where it should have started, where the problems began, it would have been then. And the thing is, I was living with 4 other guys. We're all in our early 20s, and we all make more money than any of us need to get by. So, we had all kinds of money. And, I changed my looks, started going to the clubs with them, drinking and partying, and I was having a good time. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I won't lie, I enjoyed my time at the beginning. But then things started getting a little bit more extreme, I guess. I don't remember the first time I tried ecstasy, but what I do remember is that I had a lot of fun using ecstasy. Um, I mean, I can look back now, and I mean, I used to brag about it when I was, this is in the before times, I guess. But, just what does addiction do? Well, addiction allows you to go in a month-long ecstasy binge every day for 30 days and think there's nothing wrong with that. That's what addiction does. And, that was just the ecstasy. And then I remember another time I was at the Palace. Oh, I think it's closed now, but back when I was there, it was a happening spot. So we used to go all the time. And guy just broke out some coke right there and on one of the bars and said, "Buy me a drink, I'll give you a line." So I bought him a drink. He gave me a line. And but I never really got into the cocaine. I mean, I did a significant amount at times. We had this friend, he was a big cokehead, but like one New Year's Eve, he had 3 of us over, and he bought like $400 worth of cocaine, and we all just sat around like literally all night. And by the end of the night, by it's like 6 in the morning, there was just so much left. He was just like, "Here, take some home, take some home." And that wasn't a bad time. We just sat around, we talked, we didn't get in any trouble. So I mean, I had all these positive experiences with doing drugs and drinking and partying that I never considered how detrimental it was to me at the time, both to my mental health and my physical health, and the danger that I was putting myself in. I can remember jumping into the back of a pickup truck and lying down at 4 in the morning, and I'm drunk as can be, and I'm high on ecstasy, and we're flying through the streets of Calgary, and I don't know, don't even know where we were, don't know where we went, but I know we were flying, and that could have been the death of me. And that is one of many events that happened while I was living out west. Another one, me and a friend were at the Metro down by Chinook Mall. I don't even know if that's there anymore, the Metro. But we had missed our last bus home, and we didn't have a ride, but he had been flirting with a waitress, so she said she'd give us a ride home. So we're like, oh, hey, that's great. We get a sober driver. It's great. So we had to wait around for her. So we're waiting around in the parking lot, and there's this really, really, really drunk Lebanese guy there, and he's like falling over, and he can barely talk. Anyway, so the waitress comes out of the bar for the night, and she's like, "All right, you guys ready to go?" And we're like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, just let me get my boyfriend." And she turns around and she looks at this group of people, and oh my God, he was the driver. Like, oh my God, and of course, we're just totally out of it. So what do? We get in the back seat. Now we lived out in the northwest, way up by past 16th Ave. So we get into the Sunfire, and guys driving at least a $120 or more going down Center Street, and we're coming up to a set of lights, and there's cars on either side of the lane, and he's not slowing down, and he turns around in the seat like this, and he says to us, "Yeah, this is where I got into that car accident last time." And oh my God, my heart sunk to the floor. I don't know how we made it back alive, but we did. And like, that in itself was dangerous, but what ended up being more dangerous is apparently this guy belonged to some sort of gang. And a couple weeks later, when none of us were there was one of us home, one of our roommates was home. Another one of them was selling pot, and these two SUVs pulled up, and these guys just got out of their vehicle with guns, ran up the side of the house, kicked in the door, looked at the guys, said, "Don't move," and they went and they robbed us. Well, they robbed my roommate, and then left. So, these are the kind of trouble you get yourself into. I mean, there's a lot of things that could have happened in my life that would have ended a lot sooner. And how it didn't happen out west is beyond me. One of the worst things that ever happened to me when I was out west when it comes to drugs is we used to drive up to Banff for no reason. We just go up, we drive up to Banff, and we park down by the river, we get stoned or whatever, and we'd go run around the Banff Springs Hotel, which is an amazing hotel. Just absolutely beautiful. I've never stayed there, but I have been there a few times. So I'll tell you two stories about that. The first one, there was 6 of us, and we'd all taken ecstasy, well, except for the driver. He was just smoking pot, and I'd taken 2. It's the first time I ever did taken 2, because I only ever needed 1. I have a low tolerance for some reason to most drugs and narcotics. Anyways, so I was higher probably than I've ever been at that point, and we got out to Banff, and I had this amazing idea. See, now, when we were younger, we used to play around on parked cars, but I remember the hood. You could reach right under it. You could literally hold on to it. I had this great idea that I was going to recreate a childhood moment. And I said, I'm going to hold on to the hood, and I want you to throw me off. Well, so I got on the hood of this car, and there was a plastic lip that wouldn't let me go to grip. But being in the state that I was, I thought it was a good idea to do it nonetheless. Anyways, I got thrown from the hood of this car at about 30 kilometers an hour. And it was all like slow motion. I remember it just head first into the pave, and then rolling, and then head first into the cement again, and then landing on my back and just laying there. And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, like, oh man, this is really gonna hurt in the morning. And I didn't realize quite how bad things had been until all of a sudden it was like it's like a movie. Like first it's ringing, and then all of a sudden you can hear distant voices, and it gets louder and louder, and it's yelling, and all I can hear is somebody yelling, "Oh my God, I think he's dead." And I was like, "Nope, I'm alive!" And I thought it was the funniest thing. Anyways, my head swelled up to the size of a basketball, and we drove around a town with infinite hotels looking for ice for about 45 minutes before we realized we could just pretty much stop anywhere. Anyways, I'm pretty sure I gave myself pretty severe concussion. Um, Probably should have gone and seen a doctor, but I was actually too scared, so I didn't. And then there was another time we had gone up, and there was 5 or 6 of us, girls and guys, and we were all on E again, and we were running around the hotel, and we got spotted by security. So we just split up, and we all went our separate ways, and we lost them. So anyways, we're looking for our friends again, and we come up to this balcony, dead end balcony, and found our friend, and we're like, "Hey, you ready to go?" And they're like, "No, no, no, you got to come here." And apparently her and our other friend had stumbled upon a charming wedding party at the Banff Springs Hotel at 3 in the morning and started drinking with them. And as we're talking with them, security comes up behind us, and he's like, "All right, you guys, it's time to go, or we're going to have to call the police." And the wedding party, the Germans went, I love Germans, they're the greatest people ever. They're like, "No, no, 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 no. They're with us. They have to stay." Anyways, we got to stay and drink with the Germans. It was awesome. But again, these were times when my addiction wasn't affecting real life. I still had a job. I was still getting paid. But that doesn't last forever. And it wasn't very long before, I didn't have a job. I turned to selling drugs. That went down the hill really fast. And I ended up homeless for a little bit. And then I ended up staying with my brother. And between being homeless and ending up with my brother's, a warrant was put out for my arrest for grand theft auto because I had a rental vehicle that was a week overdue that I just returned that morning. Well, not that morning, but shortly before. Fortunately, they did end up getting the vehicle, and the warrant was dropped. Otherwise, I might still have a warrant in Calgary. I don't know, but I don't think I do. Point being is that, what started out as a lot of fun and entertainment and started to slowly really affect my life to the point where I lost my job and I was living on the streets of Calgary. And, I did manage to, for a short while there, get myself back together. I stopped with the ecstasy and the partying. I got a job again, moved with a friend who knew what I'd been through, and things were all right. Things were good. And then in 2004, I came back to Yarmouth from Calgary, and the partying life it apparently came with me. I started drinking again, partying all the time. I had a friend move down from Alberta that I used to party with then, so that didn't help. But it was just mostly a lot of drinking then. And, this went on for a few years. A lot of drinking. Definitely was an alcoholic. I mean, it got so bad that at one point I was working 2 jobs, and one was a fast food restaurant, and I'd go into work there at 4 o'clock with a quart of Malibu rum just to get ready for my shift up at the other place, which was a bar, for 10 o'clock, where I'd spend the rest of the night drinking double rums and cokes. I mean, I drank a lot back then. I mean, occasionally I'd do some coke that somebody brought with them that I knew, but for the most part, it was just a lot of drinking. And with alcoholism and partying and that much drinking comes stupid decisions, and I made lots of those. I got arrested for stealing flags. I can't count the amount of times that I thought it was a good idea to get behind the wheel of a vehicle and drive. Just doing really stupid things, some illegal, some not, but just definitely in a downward spiral. And I don't know if it was intentional or if it was subconscious or what, but I was definitely heading in a bad direction. And I mean, relationships suffered. I started just not caring about very much other than partying. I mean, I drink in the shower, I drink at work, I drink at night, drink in the morning. It was just hell. I used to make furniture out of cases of 2 4s of beer just for something to do. And it was a lot of fun at the time, or at least I thought. But it was, looking back, it might have been fun at the time, but it definitely wasn't good for who I was, or from, it wasn't good for me. And no matter how much I think and remember back about times that I did enjoy, those were just ways of deceiving myself into thinking that what I was doing was okay, and it wasn't. And inevitably, you know, it catches up to you. And drinking didn't catch up to me, but drinking, it led me to a darker place than I've ever been in my life. And I'm not going to speak too much on that right now, because that's going to be for the next video, when I talk about my crack addiction. But I think it's important to just take a moment here and talk about alcohol, because, you know, they say there's marijuana is a gateway drug, or there's, but no, it's alcohol. I 100% certainty alcohol is the gateway drug. There is no drug, no narcotic, no stupid decision, well, not probably stupid decision, but you get the point, that I didn't do until I was drunk first. I didn't do cocaine until I was drunk and my inhibitions were gone. I didn't smoke pot, cigarettes, crack, when we get to that, ecstasy. I never did any of those things unless I was drinking first. Every single bad choice that came to doing drugs in my life started with drinking. And in Nova Scotia particularly, we have a really bad alcohol culture where we think that it's okay. We even encourage young teenage kids to drink. I mean, we host their prom parties, and I mean, there's some responsibility there, and I mean, that's definitely progress, rather than just letting them meet in a random field somewhere where no one knows what they're doing. But we promote it in such a, we make it such a positive thing, such a socially acceptable thing, that we don't even see the damage that it's causing, or we choose to ignore it. But it starts young, I'll tell you. And we need to address that problem in Nova Scotia, because like I said, there isn't anything that I didn't do that I wasn't drunk for first. You know, and 9 times out of 10, if there's someone behind the wheel of a vehicle inebriated, it's going to be alcohol. And that's just the fact of the matter. And I think that if we addressed and educated about alcohol and alcohol culture and the dangers surrounding it, then it won't stop all the problems of addiction, but it'll definitely have an impact somewhere along the way. And I mentioned that, you know, people tend to not see alcoholism as an addiction, but when you look back at it, alcoholism was the first way they identified addiction. And being an alcoholic, you're as much an addict as the crackhead on the street with no teeth living underneath of a bridge. Addiction is addiction, no matter what you look like. So, you know, from the time I was 19 until I was about 24, you know, for the first half of that time, I didn't do very much. You know, I was depressed, but I really wasn't self-aware of it. And then the second half, you know, I started partying with friends and having what I thought was lots of fun, and that led to doing more drugs. But in the end, it ultimately led me to a position where I was vulnerable, where I was looking for self-destruction, and I found it in crack. So, you know, I did want to, you know, tell some more stories about things, but I want to kind of keep this video as short as possible. Or not as short as possible, but below a certain time. I don't want them to be too long, but I mean, there's so much to talk about. But so thank you for joining me. It's going to be a little easier to talk about this stuff moving forward. It obviously impacted me in a big way, being an addict emotionally and mentally and physically. But it's a lot easier to talk about than the death of my son. So thanks for joining me. Please give the video a like. I've got some trolls out there who come to every video I have and dislike it for some reason. And if you want want to see more videos in the series, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me.